time they open the doors down there twice a week, they bring in about $500 every time they open the door. That thing is growing. I expect somewhere about 50,000 just this year from that thrift store. So having that flexibility to buy new carpet, new books, new toys will be helpful. So, questions? No? Good.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Del and Ben. All right. One of the themes that I hope you're hearing is the integration of our different ministries and the way that they support each other and the larger mission of the church. So that is very appropriate for a connectional church and a connectional denomination. And in that spirit, I want to invite the lay members forward. That is Bobby Nichols and Diane Ilstrup, who have a presentation for you, sharing from a very joyful annual conference this year.
He wants control. So thanks for the introduction. I'm Bobby Nichols, and this is Diane Ilstrup. And we were happy delegates to the annual conference this year, which was actually held in Minneapolis instead of St. Cloud, May 29th and 30th.
Well, if we're truly in the annual conference, you'd be up stamping your feet and singing, but we aren't going to have you do that. But if you need to stand during our short presentation, you may. Drawing from Isaiah 43:1, the theme for this year's conference was Jesus the Redeemer. We gathered to be reminded of what it means to be named and claimed by God.
We attended an excellent pre-conference presentation by Derek Scott III entitled The Future of the United Methodist Church, A Lay Perspective.
And Bishop Lynette Planback's powerful Episcopal address was entitled Minding the Gap.
We attended a Milestones in Ministry service, which was held at Hennepin Avenue United Methodist Church.
And at that service, we honored and thanked 14 clergy, which were entering retirement. One pastor was ordained as a deacon. 4 were recognized as provisional members. 1 was recognized as an associate member, and 6 were authorized to serve as local pastors.
We honored our Pastor Nancy's retirement.
We also honored Pastor Cynthia Williams' retirement. She was our district superintendent for the River Valley District from 2015 to 2023. And you may remember Cindy, she has preached here several times.
The congregation of Hennepin Avenue United Methodist Church and Pastors Elizabeth McCauley and Cooper Wiggin were gracious hosts of the Milestones in Ministry service.
With our legislation, hundreds of voting members in attendance approved the majority of legislation that was under consideration.
The approved legislation included moving from 5 to 4 districts as of July 1st, 2024, a resolution that denounces the increase in hate crimes in the United States, a resolution that opposes Israeli apartheid, the establishment of a conference board of lay ministry, a 2025 apportioned budget totaling $5,291,000. This represents a reduction of 9.6% from the 2024 budget.
There are 4 new districts instead of 5, and they were renamed. We are now a part of the River Bluffs district instead of River Valley, and we are in the
Green.
green.
We had a service of remembrance, and our Ted Colescott was one of the people honored.
The love offering, so far the conference members on behalf of their local churches have given $105,000 to the love offering. 1,720 of that amount were contributed by members of this church, and we thank you.
Love offering recipients included 30%, which goes to a new trauma care center in Ukraine. 30% goes to immigration legal support in partnership with Volunteer Lawyer Network. 30% goes to special programming aimed at reducing trauma at the Emma Norton Services new Restoring Waters facility, and 10% goes to volunteers and mission scholarships, which support first-time mission trip participants.
Well, we're excited. Awards were given for evangelism, faith professions, and healing a broken world. Amanda was recognized for her work with the Tea and Taco Ministry and the Teen Tween Pride After Party. Thank you.
Diane and I wish to thank you for the privilege of representing our church as delegates to the Minnesota Annual Conference 2024. We have a recap video we'd like to show you, but again, thank you so much for letting us go.
Good morning, Minnesota Annual Conference. Good morning, beloved community. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I believe that God has uniquely positioned the United Methodist Church to be trailblazers as we mind the gaps of society. We need to figure out how to tell the Jesus story to reach new people, not only for their sake, but for the sake of the gospel in the world. We will mind the gap of the least of these so that people will have their basic human needs met. You and I, lay and clergy all across the Minnesota Conference, can be engaged in the work of closing the gap, minding the gap that separates kingdom of heaven from what we're experiencing here on earth. Hallelujah. Amen.
As we join our hearts in this time of remembrance, we remember them with honor and great tenderness.
This is what we were built for, church. To be agents of hope and peace and transformation. You are more than welcome. You are wanted. You belong, and we need you in order to be the church we are called to be.
In a moment when tensions between rural and urban areas are only mounting, imagine if Minnesota could tell a different story. That is our hope for 4 districts.
And now let's see what God might do in and through this abundant life movement of Jesus Christ called the United Methodist Church in Minnesota in 2024 and beyond.
Your collective ministry represents countless hours of labor and laughter over many, many years.
You are called. You are beloved. You are precious in God's sight. Stay in love with God who believes in you and believe in the staying power of that God.
Friends, I present to you this newly ordained deacon of the Minnesota Conference of the United Methodist Church.
Good morning. You are the performers. You are the worshipers. You are not drawn close to the furious, loving fire of God to keep warm. You are plunged deep, incandescently transformed, irrevocably changed, indelibly marked, set aside for one sacred purpose, to share this love with the world.
Some of you want strangers in your community to spend an hour and 20 minutes at your church. You will not spend 15 minutes on TikTok. Why would they become uncomfortable for you if you will not become uncomfortable for them?
I hope you'll remember the God that looks at every single one of us, that grabs the second arrow, and that says, don't forget who created you, O layperson. Don't forget the one who called you by name, O clergy person. You are mine, and I have redeemed you.
Now put your right hand in. I invite you to shake it all about. Very well done. All right.
Our conference preacher for 2025 will be Matt Sipe. I can see that there's a lot of concern. So go into the world knowing that you, even though we part, are still connected one to another.
All right. See, annual conference is fun. Yeah, definitely want to go to that. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Diane. And thank you, church. So we do want to turn to an opportunity for Q&A. So Catherine, you want to come join me up here? We'll do this together. How about, Catherine, you answer all the questions. I'll run the microphone around. So are there any questions for anything that we shared today? We'll give you the mic and do our best.
I was just questioning whether the apportionment decline of 9.6 decline, is that due to the Methodist churches that left?
Do you know that, Bobby?
No, please.
Would be much better.
Oh. Yeah, I have all the mics. If I say anything wrong, we'll let Nick, our finance chair, say something. Yes, I do think part of what we heard at annual conference is that part of the reduction for the conference's budget is due to disaffiliations. The other is due to the reality of churches' financial hardships and sustainability challenges just across the conference. That's been from Thrive sharing what they shared to many places who are nonprofits or faith communities. Since COVID, it's gotten much more challenging to just keep things moving. What the conference calls the collection rate, that would be the percentage of apportionments that are received, is in the 80 to 90% range, and I believe that's been going down every year as churches are not always able to pay 100%, which is why Nick wanted to share with you that we do pay 100%. We do make sure that we fund our apportionments in full because we believe in the power of good work that happens. Would you want to add anything more just about our relationship to apportionments? No. Okay, he doesn't, no.
I'll just say it's always been a priority, and it's something that we look at very seriously and take as a commitment every year. And it is a core value that we contribute to the greater mission beyond this church.
Thank you.
Other questions? Heather Mo?
I have a question regarding Thrive. You said that you had, I think it was $66,000 set aside since it began. I'm wondering about inflation and how much that would cost nowadays as opposed to 6 years ago.
Dell, here's a microphone.
What was the question exactly about?
So you have $60,000 plus kind of in reserve in the operating.
Oh,
That's
great
hilarious.
service. My name is Pastor Jeff, one of the.
That's really funny. We'll see how that works out. Maybe they can hear me too. I'm gonna turn mine off.
Here.
All right, so we're just gonna go with Jenny breaking in every once in a while, but I've turned mine off, so I don't go over there. The question is $60,000 in the
Since here's the gift,
annual
and we
fund reserves, positive cash flow. That came in, but the question is about inflation. Have you all considered how the 144 from the first gala, the 60 plus from the second gala, how will those funds be useful as costs just keep increasing?
Are not in the room. That's probably.
Our costs do keep increasing. All those kids like to eat. And we have a full-time cook.
One quick note before continue on in worship. Doing our series.
I think the ambassador had a good comment.
Okay.
Month.
So yeah, inflation does hit us. We try to, I think every year
Truly.
we've given our teachers at least a 4 to 5%
Bring with us.
cost of living, salary increase every year. So food gets more expensive. Our budget for food is
About their own life.
$90,000 a year just to feed the kids, plus the cost of our cook and everything else. So inflation definitely hits us. So we have a new custodial contract for the church. Some portion of that's going to be given to Thrive to pay. So yeah, everything gets more expensive, so.
And could I just add one thing as far as inflation increasing costs? I mean, I think it's a reality and we see it here. I didn't drill down into the expenses, but if you look, despite our very healthy financial picture of these table of numbers that I promise not to go too deep into, our expenses are up $30,000 over what we were budgeting. Our giving, our total income, and that's the full increase is through gifts, financial gifts to this church, are up almost exactly enough to cover that over our budget. So the opportunity is we will continue, and I'm sure that Thrive would say the same thing, but we are actively managing our expenses to make sure that we are making very smart investments and controlling expenses where we can. But the reality of a growing, ministry of childcare and the obligation to keep our church buildings very clean, we've made a very intentional choice to increase the amount of funding that we're putting toward building custodial services, because we expect that for our hospitality ministry, we expect that for Thrive, and it's a choice. There are things that we can't control. Our insurance premiums are up over what we expected them to be. That's true in my own personal household, and we manage that. And it's really, again, what is the core message is through generosity, and we continue to see generosity matching these things that are happening in the world, including the change in expenses, inflationary pressures.
One thing I do want to add that I forgot to mention is, although the Thrive funds, we now have the discretion to use them as we want. Anyone that gives a check through the church or whatever and says it's for scholarships, it will go into scholarships. We will not. If that's your desire, that's where it will go.
And that's a really good point, and I want to thank our finance team for the church and for Thrive. The donor intent is a very important conversation we have, and so absolutely with this conversation, it's truly around the Thrift on Fifth funds, but any specified gift, it always will go to where it's been specified. Pete, you have a question?
Well, a comment. Actually, the anniversary, whatever was held, I think you ought to do that on an annual basis. And if you do that on an annual basis, you can raise 50, 60,000. I think that's the way we ought to go, because people really don't know, and I think that was really an important gathering. And I think, a yearly basis, I know there's some work involved, but the return on investment is pretty good.
I think you just volunteered to be the chairperson for the next day. Tell us the theme, we're ready to go.
Who doesn't love a party? Yeah.
What is the main purpose and benefit of apportionments?
So I'll start, and then Nick can jump in too. Part of what our connectional structure is United Methodist Church is such a core part of who we are as people called United Methodist. And that looks like the way in which we do business, where it's not just a leadership board meeting behind a closed door, where we actually conduct all of the official legal business of the church at our annual meeting as a body of all members having voice and vote, and anyone here having voice who is a part of our community, regardless of membership status. But it's also how we're connected with churches in our district, in our conference, in the United States, and across the world. It's why we paid close attention to the General Conference, because everything that happens with the United Methodist Church anywhere is important to us, and vice versa. We also share roughly 10% of our annual budget is our apportionment, and that goes to fund ministry in this part of the state, across Minnesota, and across the world. And that can look from covering the overhead expenses of UMCOR, so that when there's a disaster anywhere in the world, 100% of your giving towards that disaster goes to meeting the needs of people on the ground, where in our apportionments we fund the overhead for UMCOR's operations. It's funding scholarships for future ministers. So in, hopefully a very long time, when you get a new assignment of clergy, those folks are going to be well trained because of your apportionment giving, supporting people discerning a call to ministry. It's for missionaries around the world. It's for new church starts here in the state. It's really for anything you can imagine where Methodists are making an impact in, through, and beyond the local church. Our apportionment helps. It is a part of who we are, that we are bigger than this. We are bigger than what we can see. God is abundantly at work in lots of places. I've got nodding heads from our retired clergy. It looks like I'm hitting all the bullet points. I'm proud of that. But also they can tell you, too, the impact of what it means that when we say that we're United Methodist, even the structures of our finances are showing that we're united. You know the old saying that if you show me your bank account, I can show you everything that's important to you? The same is true with our budget. And our budget shows that being connected with Christians and non-Christians around the world in solidarity and mission is an important part of who we are here at Christ JMC. Nailed it. Any other questions? Yep. All right, I'll run to you.
Morning. Can you comment on the trends for church membership and attendance, and if there was any impact with the World Methodist Church?
So, Dave, are you talking about the denomination or this church or both? Both, okay. I think this might be me again. Let's start here. Our attendance since the pandemic has kind of come to a place where we are averaging around 200 to 220 people in person between our two services. And that's generally our annual average. So combined in person, average Sunday, 220, 200. And then online, we're averaging anywhere from 40 to 100 views of our two live streams combined over a 3-day period. The majority of those views are in the first 24 hours, and then by about Wednesday, the views stop. We believe we're engaging 300 individuals or with online households every week. For the denomination, in Minnesota, the conference, we had 24 churches. That would be 8% of our congregations disaffiliate and leave the United Methodist Church. Some, but not all of them, went to the Global Methodist Church, which is the new denomination, which has grown out of our disagreement and kind of ecclesial divorce around human sexuality. In the United States, just about 25% of congregations and worshipers have disaffiliated, and some, but not all, have also joined that new denomination. Many more than anticipated have just become independent and are doing their own thing, no longer connectional in a formal way like we are with our conference or denomination.
And I would just add to that point of not every church that disaffiliated moved to the Global Methodist Church, and I think it comes to this question of apportionments. Of what are we doing individually as a congregation versus what are we doing collectively in the world? And a lot of churches, and I know churches in my home state, chose not to move because it was not necessarily only human sexuality, it was independence and financial control of those resources. And a sense of connection was not the core priority. So I would also say anecdotally, what has happened in our current ministry, I've seen several people, even in the past week, comment on having come because they first came to the thrift store. So I think what we're doing and what we're investing in, even beyond the global trends of this disagreement of disaffiliation, I think that, again, our best days are ahead of us, and that might not look like it's in the same way of the count of how many people are in the building at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., add those together on live stream, add those into the total. But I think this core mission is evolving and relevant today in Rochester, and it's still relevant in the connection, even beyond, and especially beyond disaffiliation.
Yeah, I think that's right. And for our worship attendance itself, that has been growing at a slow pace, but it has been increased, especially coming out of the pandemic. And I think if you'll notice on Sundays, if you have been a part of this congregation for a while, and definitely pre-COVID, if you just take a moment to look around the room, you'll see familiar and unfamiliar faces. This is a great opportunity. You have chosen to be a part of this meeting, which means you care about this church. So let me invite you into something that Jenny and I are very focused on, and we need your help. On Sundays during coffee fellowship, Jenny and I cannot talk to every person. And we want to talk to you, but that's not what this is about. What this is about is we notice a lot of people standing by themselves, not being engaged. And we're counting on you as invested people in the life and vitality of this church. Please make it part of your Christian discipleship and your mission, part of your giving to this church, that you also give some time and talk to people. Scan the comments in the art gallery. If there's someone who's not being engaged in conversation, just see if they want to be. And if you can't remember their name for the 9th time, it's okay. Say, hey, I'm Kirkland. I'm so sorry. I'm blanking on your name. And just go from there. But we would really, really like your help with that, because we think that's what makes this place so special, is how people say they feel authentically welcome. We do great on day 1. We want to make sure we're great on day 5 as well. We need your help with that. So about engagement, what Nick was saying, on a given week, and it really depends on whether we have a Third Sunday Forum and a community event, but kind of a typical week, we will engage between 500 and 1,000 unique individuals in the building. So our worship numbers, we feel very happy with. We definitely want to grow worship and are thinking about how to continue to do that. You're a big part of that strategy. But also our engagement with people just in the building can range from 500 to 1,000 on a typical week. So we see that over the month, some weeks are higher, some are lower, but we can hit up to 1,000, and always a minimum of 500 individuals engaged in missions, ministries, or partnerships, which is kind of cool, right?